his amazement was, for some reason in his mind, he thought I pastored somewhere else for 50 years, you know, getting warmed up for where I am. We'll have a great celebration in May, and I invite all of you to share with us. I want to take a little different approach to what I'm going to share. First thing I should help you to know is that it's good to be a part of this particular gathering with Dr. James Massey as the co-presenter. And I sat there and listened as he was teaching, instructing, helping all of us. And I said, my, what confidence, what clarity, what certainty in his presentation. I said, Lord, these folk will be clamoring to hear him tomorrow after I get through raising all these questions. But he brings a wonderful, not only reservoir of information, but a relationship with God and a confidence about his word that has blessed some of us all of our lives. It's a joy that he is not only still with us, but able to present himself so wonderfully well. He's one of the older brethren, you know. His reputation well precedes him. I often run across persons in my own city and other places when they find out I'm with the Church of God. Usually the first question they ask me is, do you know James Earl Massey? Real testament to how he has impacted the church worldwide, not just in America. I still marvel. Had to be 25 years ago when Billy Graham had called a gathering of clergy in Kansas City, if I'm right, Massey, I attended that gathering, a large gathering there. I believe it was sponsored by, what's the name of the Swiss city that the committee was named after? Lausanne, right. And I was walking with Massey down the street, and a gentleman stopped us because he was acquainted with him and had a question for him. The man's name was Leighton Ford, Billy Graham's brother-in-law, and he held up Massey for a moment because he had an important question. He said to him, I believe the bishop was from Africa who had died. He was a member of the committee. And we need, he said, another member of the committee. And we don't want to choose that person without your recommendation. I marveled at that. That a man of that stature would have to turn to a Church of God preacher and get him. But this is the kind of man that we are privileged to have among us and to share with us. You heard Brother Myrick's mention that he discovered, I'm not sure whether the brothers here in this session right now are not, a cousin of his down here. I'm really glad to be in this place here, not only Hilton Head, but South Carolina. One of the key reasons for it is because my family roots are in South Carolina. And Chester County, north of here, is where my dad was born. And I have, well, yesterday afternoon, my wife got a little upset at me. I went to make a stop at a store for her and wound up being gone 2 or 3 hours. I was enjoying myself. I ran into in the store out there. Well, the clerk who waited on me was such a friendly, warm lady and quite talkative, and just reminded me of my own loving family. Now the question I was tempted to ask her was, she a Culp or related to the Culps? And let me tell you the reason why. My granddad, here in Chester County, was a very active man. He was what you'd call a double dipper. He had two families, one on one side of the creek and one on the other side. There were 22 children in one clan and 13 in the other. Well, at least that's how many we've discovered so far. So you get some idea. There's an awful lot of cults somewhere here in South Carolina. So I'm right along in this territory and being with you down here. My task is an interesting one, and I really want to use time. If Brother Kevin, Sister Culp, I'm really sorry. I had thought that Brother Massey and I would be presenting at the same time, so I didn't expect very many of you to show up over here. So I don't have enough copies for everybody. If they're husband and wife, or any of you from the same church, at least for today, would you just make one copy, and we'll do our best to distribute them to all tomorrow. But Mark, she's promised we'll run off a few more. But let me give a bit of introduction to why I'm taking the tack that I'm utilizing here today. And by the way, on that top sheet, do a little correcting for me. That sheet was not supposed to be given to you. It was for my own notes, but my secretary didn't give all the credits here. Let me see if I can find the corrected one. Here it is. The first quote on the first page is from John Chancellor. The second one is actually from Lawrence Richards, the middle quote. And the final one is from Robert Culp. All right. And so you can just mark that on that sheet now if you'd like to do so in advance. First thing I want to do is to give you a rationale for where I'm going and why I'm going there. We live in a world that is changing rapidly. We all know that. There's change anywhere and everywhere, almost any arena you want to choose. You can ride off in almost any direction. Some of you, or a few of you, are from Cleveland or Ohio, but any of you that have an interest in athletics, you're aware of the fact that major change is happening in the sports world. There's the threat of the cancellation of the National Football League season next year. There's also the threat that the same thing may happen with the NBA. And the, what do they call it, the CBA, that's the what's it stand for?
Collective bargaining agreement.
I'm not hearing you.
Collective bargaining agreement. The collective bargaining agreement.
Collective bargaining agreement, that's correct. That is disrupting everything. One of the reasons for that, for example, in athletics, is because when LeBron James left Cleveland and hooked up with two other superstars in Miami, it changed the whole dynamics of professional sports, period. Some of you are nodding your heads vigorously because you know that that's part of what was behind the brother from Denver making his abode in New York now, or the Williams fellow from Salt Lake City now playing in the metropolitan New York area, soon moving to Brooklyn. What's it all about? It's It's the inmates taking over the prison. And obviously the owners who run the plantation for so long are upset about it and threatening to call a halt to it all. But that's not only happening. When you talk about the collective bargaining agreements, you could deal with everything from Washington, D.C. to any state almost that you would choose for the battles that are going on right now, the changes, major changes that are taking place in how this country, the politics that are happening, major changes that are happening. I got a piece of literature from Newt Gingrich this week. And it was just a general mailing, and on the envelope was a simple statement where it said, President Obama said, this nation is no longer a Christian nation. Now we all know what his purpose is in quoting that, but I want to call him or write him and tell him, well, some of us preachers have been saying that for a long time. Obama's just repeating, I'm sure, something he's heard in a black church somewhere. But it's the kind of change that's happening in our nation. It's happening around the world. We all are watching not only what happened in Egypt, but what's happening in Libya. I wanted to be on time this morning, so I didn't get to read the USA Today at my door, but I don't know whether Gaddafi stepped down yet or not. Has he? He hasn't yet. You know he's related to us. He's going to hang in there. Change is just going on all over this world of ours. In almost any arena, it's happening over and over again. Now, obviously, the religious realm is no exception. A part of even what's happening around the world is not simply political. There are religious connotations to it all. Most of you would be aware that if you're like myself, you got literature from both sides in terms of the revolution in Egypt. Christians who wrote to me pleading that our prayers would be that Mubarak would not be overthrown. And because he allows Christianity to operate. Doesn't matter that he's a dictator. Doesn't matter that people are in bondage. To these persons, far more important is our message. Now, not that I'm condemning at all what they're standing for, but at least so you understand the dilemma that change produces as far as the world's concerned. And then there were those, the exact opposite, who wrote and said, please pray for the success of this revolution, that the Muslim Brotherhood is not a threat to our well-being. People need freedom here, and they just as strong in an opposite stance. We have those kinds of problems related to the whole Arab-Israeli conflict, and it's difficult sometimes. Sometimes you want to be biblical about it, but so often the interpretations I hear don't sound very biblical to me. And so it creates a real dilemma for us. In the midst of all of this, then, we have our own problems in the church worldwide, and especially the church in America. To some degree, God in His mercies is going to be sending missionaries back to America. I think most of you know, not only did Brother Duncan inform us that Africa actually has more churches than what we have in America now, the churches of God. I happen to have a co-laborer in Toledo who was formerly a bishop in Kenya, in Nairobi, in Africa, not Church of God, man, another background. But he has come to America. Mr. Carroll, what is he? He is
a missionary to America.
A missionary. He's on mission. God sent him from Kenya for the salvation first of the American church. And then,